I have been keeping up with the Acolyte, and overall, I am really enjoying the show. I like following the main characters like Soul and Osha and May. I'm captivated by all the plot twists. I'm especially captivated by the villain Qimir and his biceps. No, sorry. His fantastic fight choreography and his tremendous skill and charisma as a villain, as a very hot villain. No, maybe this is just a fluke. Like me being attracted to villains says nothing about me as a person. Okay, moving on. Tofu. Ah, let go of the curtain. Tofu! What are you doing? So yeah, I had a great time watching The Acolyte. I genuinely, aside from the skit, really enjoyed it. And I was really captivated by Qimir for all the wrong reasons. And it seems like the rest of the fandom was too. So I have an article here from Time magazine, but the reveal of his face almost didn't matter because the audience had already been distracted by Jacinto's impossibly chiseled arms. Creator Leslye Headland, or her costume designer, clothed Jacinto in the Sith version of a muscle shirt, muscle cloak, so that he could bare his veiny biceps during the fight. The impressive choreography of the lightsaber duel also allowed Jacinto to flex these arms a lot. The scene went viral, and not just because of the character's swordsmanship. Entertainment Weekly quickly posted a cover featuring Jacinto's arms, and the replies were predictable. Qimir, you're despicable. Oh my god, arms. I hate you. Arms. I don't even want to look at you. How did you get those? Get away from me. Oh no, I tripped into your biceps. I need him biblically. I need him in a way that is concerning to feminism, okay? So yeah, I have some vindication, and I know that this isn't just a me problem, okay? This is a thing that loads of people have. And it's not just with Qimir, it's with Miguel O'Hara, you have the Darkling, you have Namor, Wanda, Ben Solo, Hela. Is it because the creators of these things intentionally make them hot? Probably. They know that the entire fandom's completely deranged when it comes to attraction to fictional supervillains. But I guess the question is this kind of attachment to supervillains healthy? And what does it say about us? It's important to highlight first and foremost that there are many types of villains. And more generally, it is a very specific type that usually reach heartthrob status. So you have the ones that are straight up evil, completely irredeemable. So you're thinking about ones like Kilgrave and Stormfront, even if they are played by conventionally attractive actors. What do these characters do? Well, first of all, Stormfront is a fucking Nazi, like an actual Nazi. She commits several hate crimes throughout The Boys. And Kilgrave, well, Kilgrave's just a fucking gross, despicable human being. Like, David Tennant plays him so well that he is just so inhuman, so repulsive in how he acts. But then, if these characters doing despicable things is turning the audience off, why are characters like Qimir and Ben Solo so attractive? When they kill plenty of people, they are not moral characters. So the answer can be found in a 2019 academic article written by Amanda Jobs of Elizabethtown College. She basically details how the severity of crimes on film and TV translate differently than they do in real life. So while murder in the real world would be absolutely despicable, among the worst things that you can do, murder is bad in the real world, flat out. But in film, the effects of murder or a character committing murder is less pronounced, less of a crime in the fictional world, or at least that's the way the audience perceives it. So you can have a character like Qimir who's slicing up a bunch of Jedi, both named and unnamed, and you don't come out of it at the end thinking that he should die. You don't automatically hate the guy, or at least I don't. The same goes with Villanelle. She's committed several atrocities, she's murdered people, but that doesn't mean that we necessarily hate her, because murder isn't treated with the same severity in fiction as it is in real life. That's in stark contrast to something like sex crimes or being an actual Nazi. Those are recognized more as completely irredeemable in fiction. So I briefly mentioned this, but you have characters like Wenwu and Loki and Villanelle who are the more redeemable type, the type that are willing to kill, but they're types that audiences are endeared to anyway. For Loki, he was brought up feeling betrayed by a family that he found out he was adopted by.
What, because I'm the monster parents tell their children about at night?
His backstory is kind of tragic, and he hides his trauma behind a veil of narcissism, behind a veil of trying to get control. All of this could be found in the first episode of Loki, where he opens up about his vulnerabilities. The point is that Loki, while he does kill 80 people in 2 days...
He's my brother.
He killed 80 people in 2 days.
He's adopted.
We don't really have any connection to those 80 people. They just kind of die, and we're like, oh, okay, we kind of treat it in the abstract. So when we see Loki's more vulnerable traits, we can more closely relate to that. We can relate to Loki feeling like an outcast, like he's a failure. We can relate to Loki having affection for people like his mum or like his brother, even if he doesn't show it. In the case of Wenwu, we can relate to grief. So Wenwu is capable of many atrocities, as shown in the film Shang-Chi, but we don't really internalize those atrocities. We more so see the vulnerable side of him. We see the side of him that was a dad. We see the side of him that was a husband. And then we see his life post his wife's death, and you see that relationship, and you see the pure vulnerability of Wenwu. Like, there was a part of the film that was just so resonant with me, where he had rings on his wrist that stopped his aging, and the thing that made him finally take his rings off was the fact that he'd fallen in love, and that he would be willing to grow old with the woman he fell in love with, and the children that that they're going to raise together. And that is really beautiful. And then you see that thing violently be taken away from Wenwu. You see the one time that this villain got emotional, got vulnerable, bared his heart to someone, got so horrifically broken by it that he would be willing to do anything to bring that back, even risking the fate of the entire world. The camera storage ran out. I've cleared it. Let's continue. Amanda Jobs writes that all of these villains represent deviance, a break from the Western social standards that define many groups of people today, whether they have odd mannerisms, selfish and impulsive tendencies, or superhuman powers that allow them to hurt people in terrifying ways. They all manage to simultaneously mystify and endear their audiences. Deviant behavior combined with minimal consequences for their behavior, attractive actors, and human vulnerabilities all play a part in sexualizing these characters. What Amanda was saying there is pretty much that villains are allowed to explore the dark areas of ourselves the masochistic facets of ourselves that heroes don't really allow us to explore, or at least they do, but not any meaningful amount, whereas villains are allowed to properly dive into this stuff while also being human. To an extent, this harkens back to older representations of attractive female villains. So you have two examples here, the Femme Fatale and Sirens. Tofu. So an example of the Femme Fatale can be seen in Out of the Past, released in 1945. It does go by a different name, Raise My Gallows High. These two titles can be interchangeable depending on which country you're from, but don't be confused, they're literally the same film with the same cast, the same plot, everything. This film has a pretty perfect example of the Femme Fatale. You have a female character called Kathy who commits murders, and she seduces our leading man, Jeff. This romance ultimately leads to the demise of both Kathy and Jeff, so both of the characters are punished for this. Kathy is punished for committing the crimes, and Jeff is punished for following her in the first place.
Baby, I don't care.
And the way he's punished is that he's shot in the groin by her. At the same time that he met his end, he had his masculinity, his manhood, taken away from him. Throughout the course of the film, Jeff has two love interests, Kathy and Anne. While Kathy is the more deviant example, the alluring female character that ultimately leads to Jeff's death through her deviant actions, Anne is like the safe conservative option. She dresses modestly, she is a quiet, submissive woman who just does whatever her man tells her to, and she is pretty much the poster child for 1950s housewife culture. So in a way, with how these two characters' fates are treated, Anne is treated as the safe option within the context of the film. She isn't punished for who she is. That being said, the film doesn't exactly give us a good reason to go on that side other than you'll probably die sooner if you don't. Like in the film, Kathy is a much more interesting character than Anne is. Anne is flat, two-dimensional, but Kathy is the one that brings us on this exciting plot. She is the one that makes the film happen. So, excuse me, production code, if I am more in tune with Kathy than I am Anne, because Anne is just a cardboard cutout of a character I don't really have much to go with. So in this way, the production code doesn't really work because it's like, yeah, maybe I would rather die sooner. But this idea of the femme fatale, the deviant villain that is sexually alluring, is not new. I mean, it's quite new that male villains are the sexually alluring ones, because typically these films are made for men, so the sexually alluring one would be a woman. But by no means are these things new. Even going back to the 1700s, you have folk stories of attractive sirens. So these are mermaids that appear in the water, and they lure horny sailor men to their deaths with their beautiful songs, their attractive presence, only to let them get close and then eat them alive. In a way, this is also a cautionary tale as well as a folk tale, because it's telling sailor men to, just because you're horny when you're on sea, doesn't mean that you should act desperate and ignore red flags. So it does have kind of a patriarchal undertone. The whole conception of a witch, of a siren, of a femme fatale is rooted ultimately in misogyny and kind of perpetuates this idea that the villain is the deviant. The villain is a stand-in for the non-accepted, the outcast of society. But is this obsession with villains all that healthy? Well, I guess so. Because fiction, well, it's fiction, it's not real. But there are some people that do object to this trend of glamorizing people who do bad things on film. Like, if you look at the Reylo fandom, Reylo is a ship. It's a pairing between Kylo Ren and Rey of the Star Wars franchise. Kylo Ren is an antagonist in the sequel trilogy of Star Wars films, but he's also quite attractive, and he does have this kind of romantic chemistry with the lead protagonist Rey. And the amount of fan fiction that have been written on these two characters together is honestly insane. Like, 26k is unheard of for most ships and most fandoms, but Reylo shot to pretty much almost the top. I think on rankings, Reylo is around 3rd on AO3. The point is that people eat this enemies to lovers stuff up. But that doesn't mean that Reylo isn't divisive, because there are also a lot of people who had pushback to Reylo. There are a lot of people calling the relationship abusive or problematic, and that, like, we shouldn't be glorifying this stuff because it glorifies toxic behavior and abuse. Whereas the Reylo side of things were more chill about it. It was like, nah, it's fiction. It's not real. Chill the fuck out. This is a fictional relationship, and then they whip out their own defenses of the Reylo ship. So, in the case of Reylo, something is intriguing about the relationship between a hero and the villain. Kylo Ren is a classic Byronic hero in that he's ruthless, arrogant, and emotionally tortured, similar to Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet. Rey and Kylo are the only ones that can match each other in strength and wit. They are so unique because they are both broken halves, looking for someone who understands them. So you can say that while these characters are problematic in their dynamic, and yes, in real life, if you paired these two together, it would be very fucking problematic. But what we have to remember is, more often than not, these characters are allegories for greater messages and greater ideas. You don't have to endorse every single component of their relationship and think, damn, I want a relationship like this in real life, because most people who ship this stuff don't. So you can argue that Rey and Kylo Ren, as problematic as they are an allegory for something entirely different. They're an allegory for finding the one person who understands you. That person might be on the other side of a conflict. And so, like, the message of The Last Jedi is, you don't win by fighting what you hate, but by saving what you love. I know that that quote is maligned by Last Jedi antis, but it's true in the case of Reylo. So if we take this idea of relationships being allegories for something different on screen, we can apply the same thing to Qimir. So Qimir could be read as kind of queer-coded in that he is rejected by the Jedi Order, and the Jedi Order don't want him to exist, so in protest, he ruthlessly kills Jedi. He is also very attractive, and if you hear the audio subtitling, the subtitling is fucking ogling him as well as the audience.
He begins to undress, revealing a prominent scar on his well-toned back. Dropping his billowy-legged hakama pants, he steps forward with the sunlight accentuating his taut muscles.
And he has this kind of romantic tension with Osha that I'm not sure is going to get resolved, but I would certainly like it to. And that kind of has a bit of queer energy to it as well, because Osha, who has been on this one side, this Jedi organization, this Puritan Jedi organization that says the dark side is bad no matter what. Well, Qimir is the dark side, and she is on forbidden enemy territory, who is like, yeah, well, the Jedi fucking suck. They have their dogmatic ideals, and they are trying to stop me from existing. That reads very similar to queer people in real life. Queer people often are persecuted by the authorities above them. They live in countries where the authorities don't want them to exist. So you think of the various far-right parties around the world that outlaw LGBT people. You think of Republicans in the United States who are trying to outlaw trans people in any way they can. So then when a queer person watches Star Wars, it's like, yeah, I relate to Qimir. Despite him killing people, I see his vulnerability, and I can fix him. So while you can think of this in abstract terms, yes, Qimir force-pushed Osha. Yes, Qimir killed every single one of Osha's friends, and yes, he stole Osha and brought her back to his, island far away. This could also just be an allegory. It speaks to parts of us that are hidden deep inside, parts of us that are subconscious to us, and parts of us that make us relate to him and make us resonate with the tension that's being created between them. And that is why I don't view enemies to lovers ships as problematic. That is why I don't view loving villainous characters, being attracted to villainous characters, going on the internet and jokingly saying, I can fix him, or I would like him to turn me into Swiss cheese. That is why those things aren't problematic. They're fun. They don't necessarily translate to real life issues. So if you find Qimir hot, if you find Shin Hati hot, if you find Kylo Ren hot, keep finding them hot. No one's gonna stop you from doing that. Because yes, they are fucking hot, okay? So yes, I endorse your absolutely smutty fan fictions of these characters. Just, you keep being you. Anyway, that was The Preach. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoy your problematic characters. And if you did enjoy this video, please leave a like, subscribe for more, maybe share it with your friends who also ship problematic things and also find Qimir hot. But yeah, that being said, next week will be an exploration of Dune and how Denis Villeneuve will adapt Dune Messiah. I'm currently listening to the audiobook for Dune, which will take about 22 hours. Plus, I have to also listen to Dune Messiah, so that's extra time as well. So I am working hard on that video. And if you would like to see that, subscribe. But anyway, yeah. See you next week.